This episode talks about how I learned to rely on others and I found a support system. Hi, and welcome back to After the Quiet. This is episode 40. When September came around, maternity leave was officially over, and reality set in. I had to go back to work, and that meant I had to figure out childcare for my daughter. When my boys were little, things had been easier. My parents lived nearby back then. They were always willing to help, always there when I needed them. But life had changed. I had switched schools, and suddenly that support system wasn't right around the corner anymore. My sister, who had been watching my daughter during those final months of the school year, had to return to work as well. She had already given us such an incredible gift. 4 months of her life dedicated to caring for my daughter, loving her, playing with her, baking banana bread, and planning scavenger hunts for the boys. But that chapter had come to an end. Now it was my responsibility to figure something else out. So I did what many parents do. I turned to Facebook. I asked friends for recommendations. I read posts in local parenting groups. I messaged people who had openings in their home daycare. Eventually, I found someone not too far from my school. She seemed nice, friendly. She had children around my daughter's age, and the environment looked welcoming. And my daughter? She was easygoing. The kind of child who could settle into new places without too much trouble. So she was happy there. Of course, once again, the logistics became my responsibility. Every morning, I would load the kids into the car, drop my daughter off at daycare, the boys to school, then head to work. At the end of the day, I would pick her up, drive to my in-laws' house to get the boys after school, and then finally head home. It was a lot of driving, a lot of coordination. But that's what parents do. We figure it out. After about a month and a half, though, I started noticing little things. Nothing dramatic. Just small observations that slowly added up. The daycare had advertised lots of outdoor playtime, but it didn't seem like the kids were getting outside very often. Not a huge deal on its own. But I also began to feel like the caregiver's attention was divided. She had another business she was running, and sometimes it felt like childcare wasn't really the main focus. And suddenly, I felt that familiar panic parents feel when something about childcare doesn't sit quite right. Because when your child is somewhere all day while you're at work, you need to trust that they're being cared for in the way you would care for them. So I started making calls. Quietly, trying to see what other options existed. And then I thought about his aunt. She lived very close to my school. She had watched her grandchildren before, but things had become quieter in her house lately. There weren't any kids during the day anymore. So I reached out, and she said yes. She offered to watch my daughter. At first, I actually felt a little guilty about it, because she had just gotten to a place in life where her days were calmer. No toddlers running around, no diapers or naps to manage. and now suddenly she would have an 18-month-old in the house again. But she didn't hesitate. And before long, another little baby joined them during the day, her 6-month-old granddaughter. What started as a solution to my childcare problem turned into something much more meaningful. Switching care to his aunt was probably one of the best decisions I could have made for my daughter. Every day she was surrounded by family. She played in the yard with her great-grandfather. She saw cousins regularly. She was outside, exploring, laughing, being loved. And the bond that formed between my daughter and his aunt was incredibly strong. You could see it in the way my daughter ran to her in the mornings. You could see it in the comfort she felt in that house. And I will forever be grateful to his aunt for the time she gave to my daughter. Caring for a toddler every day is no small commitment, especially when you've already raised your own children. But she did it with patience, warmth, and generosity. She dedicated so much of her time and energy to helping our family, and my daughter thrived because of it. Later on in my story, I'll talk about what happened between him and his aunt and the rest of his family after our separation. That's a chapter that comes much later. But for now, in this moment of the story, his aunt was a bright light. Someone who stepped in quietly and gave my daughter a safe, loving place to grow. This is after the quiet. And sometimes the people who change your life the most are the ones who simply show up when you need them. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast and share it with others who might need to hear my story. And also join me on Instagram at after.the.quiet. If you recognize parts of my story in your own, please reach out to someone who can give you support, or look for that support in your community. You are not weak for needing help. You are human. Your voice deserves to be heard.